The space station floated like a jewel in the black emptiness of the Kalari Dominion. It was vast, with towers of shimmering metal reaching toward the void, and halls that glimmered with alien technology. Humans had never visited a station like this. Even the diplomatic team from Earth felt small and fragile among the alien grandeur. Captain Evan Rourke stood near the observation deck, watching the red stars of the Dominion swirl in the distance. He had been briefed on the customs, the laws, and the protocols, yet nothing could truly prepare him for the reality of being among a species that treated biology as law. "Captain Rourke!" said Lieutenant Mara Jensen, her voice tight with nervousness. "We've been assigned to the Kalari Council Chamber for the ceremony. Are you ready?" Evan nodded, though his gut was uneasy. The Kalari were known for strict rules. One misstep could mean humiliation, or worse. "Ready," he said. "Let's move." The council chamber was larger than any room he had ever seen. Massive pillars spiraled toward a ceiling filled with floating lights, casting strange shadows that made the room feel alive. Members of the council, tall and regal in appearance, sat in their seats. Their skin shimmered with natural patterns that shifted with their moods. Each movement seemed deliberate, like a living work of art. Evan had read about this in reports, but seeing it firsthand made him aware of how little he truly understood these beings. As they walked, a sudden alarm blared through the station. Lights flashed red. The Kalari guards moved with speed and precision, herding people toward exit routes. Panic rippled through the human delegation.
Mara grabbed Evan's arm.
"We need to evacuate now," she shouted.
They ran down twisting corridors, away from the center of the station where the disturbance originated. Smoke filled the air, warning lights flickered, and distant screams echoed through the halls. Evan's heart raced, but he kept his mind clear. His military training took over. Observe, plan, act. Then, in a moment of chaos, Evan found himself separated from the group. One corridor led him to a door marked with alien symbols he did not recognize. He hesitated, then pushed it open. The room beyond was empty, except for one figure. Standing in the center was Valith, one of the Kalari Council members. She had been moving through the station's inner chambers to check on the emergency systems when the humans arrived. Evan froze. He had walked straight into a private chamber, a place clearly forbidden to outsiders. Valith's eyes widened in alarm, and her body stiffened. In her panic, she had forgotten to activate her ceremonial shield, a device that hid her full form from outsiders. Now, Evan saw her exposed, the way no human was ever meant to see a Kalari. His brain froze. He had read about the laws, but it felt unreal until this moment. You have seen me," Valith said, her voice trembling. "The law you must, or we both die." Evan frowned. I don't understand," he stammered. "What law? What do you mean?" Valith's expression was a mixture of fear and anger. "Exposure of the unshielded form binds us," she said. "Survival requires a life bond." "The law demands it. You must mate with me, or the council will execute us both."
Evan's mind raced.
Mate, he knew humans and Kalari were biologically different. He had not expected this, but he also understood the stakes. Refusal meant death. The council would see this as a violation, a deliberate insult, and the station's rules were absolute.
I can't. This is...
"Our species are different," Evan said, trying to reason with her. Valith shook her head, fear flashing across her features.
"This is not about desire. This is survival."
"If we do not form the bond, the council will see it as dishonor. Execution is immediate." Evan's military mind kicked into high gear. Panic would not help. Neither would brute force. He had to think. He studied the symbols on the walls, the technology of the room, even the way Valith stood. He had read the Kalari legal texts briefly before the mission, and fragments returned to him now. Survival bonds could be interpreted in different ways. The law was ancient, yes, but it was written for their species. Perhaps a loophole existed. Wait, he said, lifting a hand. If it's about survival, there may be a way to satisfy the law without the part you mean. Vela's eyes narrowed. You do not understand. No outsider has ever challenged this. If you try, we will die. Evan took a step closer, careful not to frighten her further. I don't intend to challenge it foolishly, but maybe there is a definition, a loophole, something they have never considered. For the first time, Valeth paused. She studied him carefully. There was something in his eyes, a calmness, a determination, a refusal to panic. Most of her species would have collapsed under the pressure. Humans were different. The alarm in the station grew louder. Fires flared in distant halls. Guards shouted in alien languages. The chaos of the evacuation had turned the station into a maze of smoke and danger. But in that small room, the two of them had a moment of uneasy connection. Survival depended on understanding, on intelligence, not fear. We have minutes, Valeth said, her voice tight. If we do not form the bond, the council will come. Execution is not mercy. Evan nodded. Then we must act quickly. He pulled up a portable translator and a digital legal pad. In human training, understanding rules was as important as any weapon. If he could study the law, perhaps he could find a way to survive. He quickly typed, analyzed, and cross-referenced the few legal texts he had memorized. Valeth watched in amazement as Evan worked. He moved quickly, logically, without panic. He asked questions about the law, about the council, about past survival cases. He took careful notes. He argued with clarity, citing historical precedents in her own culture. You are unlike any human I have heard of, Valeth said softly. You do not fear death. Evan shook his head. Fear is normal, but panic is useless. If we want to survive, we must be smarter than the people who wrote the law.
Her eyes widened as understanding dawned.
Humans, she realized, were dangerous, not because they were violent, but because they were clever. They could see rules, not as chains, but as tools to bend without breaking. The sound of approaching guards interrupted them. Baleth's hands moved to her ceremonial shield, preparing for activation. But Evan stopped her. Let them come. We are ready. We have a plan. Valeth hesitated. No human had ever faced the council directly in such a manner. Most species would have submitted immediately, begging for mercy. Not this human. He stood firm, prepared to argue, prepared to challenge ancient law, and somehow she found herself trusting him. The doors opened, and Kalari guards rushed in. They froze when they saw Evan and Valeth standing together. Something in the air changed. The human did not tremble. The Kalari female did not scream. Both faced the guards with determination. You are bound together, one of the guards said in the alien language, translated through the device. The law demands a bond. What is your declaration? Evan stepped forward. We understand the law, he said. We intend to honor its purpose, but we must define the bond correctly. Survival, commitment, and shared responsibility. That is the meaning, not instinct.
Not panic. We declare a survival compact.
Valeth's eyes met his, and in that moment, she saw the truth. The humans were not weak. They did not submit to rules blindly. They adapted, they reasoned, they survived, and sometimes they reshaped the laws themselves. The guards did not move. The tension was thick. Outside the chamber, alarms continued. Fires flared, and the station groaned under strain. But inside, a human and a Kalari stood together, challenging history with intelligence and courage. The guards whispered among themselves. The law, ancient and strict, had never been challenged in this way. The council would have to see the truth, that survival could be achieved not by ritual alone, but by reasoning, by understanding, by choice. Valeth finally exhaled, a mix of relief and awe washing over her. You may survive this, she said. But know this, if the council does not accept your logic, neither of us will. Evan nodded. Then we ensure they have no choice. Outside, the station continued to burn. Inside, humanity's first step into the Colliery Dominion had changed everything. Survival would not come from fear. Survival would come from intelligence, courage, and the refusal to be broken by rules. In the vast blackness of space, a new chapter was beginning, not just for the humans stranded on a foreign station, but for the galaxy itself. The Kalari had believed that laws and biology ruled everything. Evan and Valeth were about to show them that human will and human choice were forces they had never imagined. The alarms still blared through the station, shaking the walls and throwing shadows across the corridors. Outside, fire erupted from broken conduits, and smoke filled the air. But inside the small chamber where Evan and Valeth stood, time seemed to stretch. Both were trapped between the relentless Kalari law and the chaos of the evacuation. Evan paced, thinking fast. He had only minutes before the council would intervene. He glanced at Valeth, who had regained some composure, her body no longer rigid with fear. "We have to do this carefully," he said. "If we rush, they'll see it as defiance. But if we stall, they'll accuse us of dishonor." Valeth nodded. Her eyes softened slightly as she considered him. "You understand our laws better than most humans ever could. You think you can argue with the council?" Evan smiled faintly. "I don't argue for amusement. I argue because it saves lives." The sound of boots approaching reminded them that their time was running out.
Evan activated his portable translator and began speaking in the Kalari tongue.
It was rough, uneven, but understandable. "We request a temporary hearing," he said, holding up a small device that projected holographic legal texts. "Our bond is a matter of survival, yes, but its definition is not limited to instinctual mating. We propose a survival compact, as permitted under Article 237 of your council's codex." Valeth's eyes widened. Few humans ever referenced the codex correctly. She could feel the tension around them, the anticipation of the guards outside, the echoes of authority that had never been questioned. "Do you really think they will accept this?" she asked.
"They will have to," Evan said. "There is no precedent for a species that binds by choice, yet it still satisfies the law."
"That is our angle." The guards outside muttered among themselves, confused by the human's boldness. The senior guard, a tall Kalari with shifting silver patterns across his skin, stepped forward. "Captain Rourke, the law is clear. Exposure of the unshielded form requires immediate bond formation. How do you justify delay?" "Delay is not defiance. We are preparing a declaration that fulfills all legal requirements. It ensures both of us survive and that the council's law is honored." Valeth watched him, astonished. You make it sound simple, but the council never considered a loophole. Never considered that survival could be intelligent." The guard's eyes narrowed. He motioned to a hovering device that projected images of historical rulings. Evan examined them quickly, his mind racing. The council had never faced a case where logic and legal precision challenged instinct and ritual. He realized that the council's rigidity was also its weakness. He glanced at Valeth. "We will need to work together. I cannot do this alone, and neither can you. This is not about fear or desire. It's about survival, and survival requires trust." Valeth swallowed hard. "Trust. Humans place a strange amount of faith in choice. My people, we would rarely rely on it." Humans are not perfect, Evan said, but we are relentless when it matters. You will see.
Minutes passed, and the chamber door slid open to admit 2 council representatives.
They were taller than the guards, their skin glimmering with intricate patterns. One spoke immediately.
You stand accused of violating the sacred law. What is your declaration?
Evan took a deep breath. He projected the survival compact onto the holographic pad. Lines of text floated between them, showing a carefully worded agreement. Shared responsibility for survival, mutual consent in all actions, commitment to honor the law's intention. This declaration satisfies the law, Evan said firmly.
It ensures that both of us live, and it fulfills the council's requirement for a survival bond.
Valeth's eyes shone with awe.
It follows the wording, she whispered. But no outsider has ever proposed a survival compact like this. They will be shocked.
The council representatives studied the holographic text. One of them, an elder named Falrex, spoke slowly.
This is unprecedented. It follows the law, yes, but it challenges centuries of interpretation.
What guarantee exists that this bond will be honored? Evan stepped forward. The guarantee is human choice. We commit ourselves fully. The law may have been written for instinct, but survival requires intention.
We intend to survive.
Even the guards stopped moving. Valeth's face reflected a mixture of fear and hope. She realized that humans, unlike her species, did not rely solely on ritual. They relied on willpower, on determination, and on reasoning. Thalrex's patterns shimmered rapidly. He was confused but also intrigued.
You speak boldly. You risk your lives in defiance of expectation.
I do not defy, Evan said. I interpret. The law exists to preserve life. We honor it in spirit and letter. Valeth stepped beside him. And we survive, she said softly, adding her agreement. The council members murmured among themselves. Other Kaleri joined the discussion via hologram, astonished by the human's logic. The very idea of a species negotiating survival through reason rather than instinct was alien and frightening to them. Outside the chamber, the station's fires continued to rage. Alarms screamed, and the evacuation proceeded chaotically. But inside, a quiet battle of minds was taking place. Evan and Valeth working together had turned the council's expectations upside down. One council member, younger and more skeptical, raised a question.
If you survive, what prevents humans from exploiting this law in other situations? Could they not pretend to bond for advantage?
We could, but we do not. Humans are capable of cunning, yes, but we are also capable of integrity. Our word is our bond. If you do not trust that, we have failed to show you the strength of humanity. Valeth's patterns shifted with a faint glow, a sign of respect and admiration among her people. She had never imagined a human could approach survival in this way. Their species relied on instinct, tradition, and fear. Humans relied on understanding, and that made them far more dangerous than she had believed.
Minutes turned into tense hours as the council debated.
Evan and Valeth stayed together, calm and focused, ready to respond to any accusation. Evan's strategy was clear. The council could not ignore logic without undermining their own laws. His survival compact fulfilled every requirement, yet defied every expectation. Finally, the senior council member, Thalrex, spoke. His patterns shimmered slowly, a sign of thought and concession. We have examined the declaration. It is valid. It satisfies the letter of the law. Your survival bond as proposed is accepted.
It is done,
she whispered. Evan nodded, a small smile on his face. For now, he said, but the station is still in danger.
We need to get out. The council nodded, their decision made.
Guards opened the chamber doors, allowing them to pass. Outside, the chaos was overwhelming. Fires raged. Debris fell from ceilings, and injured Calori and humans alike scrambled for safety. Evan and Valeth moved quickly, navigating through smoke and sparks, their compact now a shield of mutual trust in the chaos. As they reached an observation deck overlooking the main docking bay, they saw the human evacuation ships waiting. Pilots struggled to dock amid falling debris. "We need to move fast," Evan said. "We cannot let the station collapse while we argue. Your species, you survive in ways we never imagined. You do not rely on ritual, nor on instinct. You rely on will, on choice, on cooperation." Evan looked at her, the gravity of the moment settling in. "We do. And we never give up, even when everything seems impossible." Together, they boarded a small transport shuttle, weaving through wreckage and fire. The engines roared to life as they lifted off, narrowly avoiding a falling support beam. Evan piloted carefully, keeping both of them safe while monitoring the station's collapse. From above, the station looked like a dying star, fire and smoke spiraling outward into space. But humanity had survived. Not by luck, not by instinct, but by reasoning and courage. Valeth watched him, astonished and impressed. Her species had always believed humans were weak, emotional, and undisciplined. Now she knew otherwise. The shuttle docked safely with the main evacuation ship. Crew members, both human and Kalari, rushed aboard. Valeth and Evan were guided to a secure cabin, where they could finally take a moment to breathe. Valeth's voice was quiet.
"I do not fully understand your species, but I respect it. You are terrifying in a way I never imagined."
Evan chuckled softly. "We like to surprise people, and apparently, we survive situations no one thinks we can."
Then perhaps humanity is not just clever.
Perhaps it is unstoppable when it must be. Evan looked out at the stars. The Kalari Dominion would never forget this day, and neither would the galaxy. Humanity had shown that even in a foreign law, among alien tradition and ancient rules, they could survive, and even thrive, without compromise of their principles. The shuttle moved into the darkness of space, leaving the burning station behind. But for Evan and Violeth, the survival compact was only the beginning. Ahead lay negotiation, diplomacy, and the careful navigation of a galaxy that underestimated humans at every turn. And yet, Evan felt a quiet satisfaction. They had survived. They had defied expectation, and in the process, they had proven something essential. Humans did not bend to rules. Humans bent reality itself, through courage, intelligence, and choice. Valeth glanced at him once more, her patterns flickering with a mixture of awe and gratitude.
"I did not know survival could be like this,"
she said, not through instinct, not through law, but through thought, through decision.
Evan nodded. "That is humanity."
And that is why we endure. Above them, the stars stretched endlessly, indifferent yet beautiful. Humanity had survived the first test, but the galaxy was watching, and it would not be long before more challenges arrived. Challenges that would test their intellect, their courage, and the unbreakable strength of their will. For now, however, they could rest. Together, human and Kalariah, bonded by choice, ready to face whatever came next. The stars outside the shuttle window were calm, indifferent to the chaos that had unfolded on the station below. Inside, the hum of the engines and the quiet chatter of crew members filled the cabin. Captain Evan Rourke sat opposite Valeth, the Kalari council member who had narrowly survived with him. Their survival compact had saved them, but the galaxy beyond the shuttle was not going to be as forgiving. Valeth leaned back, her patterns shifting slowly with thought. You humans, you survive in ways we never imagined. Not with strength, not with instinct, but with strategy. You read the law like a weapon.
Evan smiled faintly. We've learned that survival isn't always about fighting.
Sometimes it's about understanding, reasoning, and adapting faster than anyone expects. Valeth considered this. I see now why your species is dangerous.
Not because you fight better, but because you think differently. You challenge everything. Even laws older than your civilization. Their shuttle docked at the main human ship, a sleek vessel bristling with sensors and defensive systems. The docking bay was full of evacuees, both humans and Kilari. Some Kilari officers watched Evan and Valeth with suspicion, others with cautious curiosity. News of the survival compact had spread quickly, reaching even the ship's command center. Admiral Lane, a tall woman with sharp eyes and a calm demeanor, approached them. "Captain Rourke," she said, her voice firm but respectful. "I've reviewed the situation. Your actions were bold, some might even call them reckless, but they saved lives, and more importantly, they preserved human honor in a foreign law system."
Tell me exactly what happened.
Evan recounted the events from entering Valeth's chamber to proposing the survival compact. Valeth added details, translating the council's reactions and the legal debates. Admiral Lane listened silently, her expression unreadable. When they finished, she spoke again.
Wow.
"You've done more than survive. You've set a precedent."
The Kalari Council will not forget this. Other species will hear of it.
Humanity has demonstrated a new form of power. Valeth's eyes flickered with intrigue. Power? It was not power. It was reasoning. We followed logic, not instinct.
Evan nodded. That reasoning is dangerous to anyone who underestimates humans.
They expect us to panic, to beg, to fail. When we don't, they are forced to respect us or fear us.
Admiral Lane leaned closer. And you think the Kilari Council will honor this compact outside the emergency?
What if they try to undermine it later? That is the challenge, Evan said. We've survived the immediate danger. The next step is diplomacy. We need to ensure the law's interpretation favors choice and reasoning, not fear or tradition. Valeth spoke quietly. I do not know if my council will accept it easily. Many of them believe survival bonds must follow instinctual rules. They may see our interpretation as betrayal.
Evan's gaze was steady.
Then we prepare for that. Humans have always thrived when underestimated. We will present the law, the evidence, and the reasoning publicly. The council will have no choice but to accept it. They cannot ignore logic.
Over the next hours, the shuttle crew prepared reports, holograms, and communication channels.
Evan and Valeth worked together, translating the survival compact into legal terms that the council could not dismiss.
They gathered historical rulings, highlighted loopholes, and carefully documented the emergency actions that led to their survival. Every detail was precise, every argument airtight. When they arrived at the Kilari capital, a massive city orbiting a red sun, the tension was palpable. The council chambers were filled with Kilari dignitaries, their skin patterns glowing with a mixture of suspicion and curiosity. No human had ever entered these chambers with the authority to challenge law before. Evan stepped forward, Valeth at his side. He projected the survival compact, accompanied by holograms showing the emergency situation, the council's own precedents, and the exact wording of the law. The chamber was silent. Even the youngest council members had never seen a human act with such precision. Thalrex, the senior council elder, spoke first. Captain Rourke, you have challenged centuries of interpretation. You claim that your survival compact satisfies the law, yet it defies instinct, tradition, and the very foundation of our customs.
Explain yourself. Evan met his gaze steadily.
The law exists to preserve life. In the station's emergency, both Valith and I were exposed to mortal danger. The law requires a bond to survive. We have formed a bond that satisfies the legal requirements: mutual survival, commitment, and honor, without violating moral or species boundaries. We have interpreted the law as it was intended, to ensure life. Violet's presence beside him added weight to his argument. She nodded subtly, showing her full support. The council members exchanged uncertain glances. A younger council member stepped forward, skeptical.
Even if your compact satisfies the law, it undermines our traditions. How can we trust that humans will act honorably in all situations? Evan's eyes were calm, but his voice carried conviction.
You can trust humans because we survive by choice, not by instinct. Our word is our bond. The survival compact proves that logic, reasoning, and cooperation can preserve life, even in situations your species has never imagined.
Underestimating humans has been the greatest mistake any species can make.
The council was silent again. Outside observers, other species watching via interstellar communication channels, had begun to realize the significance. Humans were not violent, not aggressive, but their cleverness and determination were a new kind of power, one that could not be ignored. Thalrex's patterns shifted slowly. This
is unprecedented. Your argument follows the law, yet reshapes its interpretation.
You have forced us to reconsider centuries of rulings.
Valith's voice trembled slightly. It was never meant to challenge. It was meant to save lives. Yet in doing so, it shows something new about humanity. Evan nodded. Yes, Evan, humans survive not because we are stronger or faster, but because we think, adapt, and act when others cannot. That is our advantage, and it is what allows us to survive challenges that other species cannot imagine. The chamber continued to debate, but the tide had shifted. Humans had shown that law could be interpreted, tradition could be challenged, and survival could be achieved without submission or fear. Even the skeptics could not ignore the logic, the precision, and the courage displayed by Evan and Valith. Hours passed, and the council finally reached a decision. Thalrex spoke again. After careful consideration, the council recognizes the survival compact as valid. Captain Rourke, Valith, your bond shall be honored. You have preserved life and upheld the spirit of the law. Let it be known that logic and choice are now recognized as valid means of survival under Kalari law. Valith exhaled relief flooding her patterns. She turned to Evan. You have done something incredible. You have changed the law, without bloodshed, without war, just by reasoning. Evan smiled faintly. That is how humans survive. Not by strength alone, but by thinking, adapting, and refusing to give up. That is why we endure, even when the odds seem impossible. Outside the chambers, other species began to take note. Reports of human reasoning, courage, and cleverness spread quickly. Diplomats from nearby star systems contacted the human command, curious about this new display of skill. The galaxy began to see humans, not as weak, emotional, or impulsive, but as a species capable of reshaping situations to survive, and even thrive, without firing a weapon. Valith's patterns shimmered with respect and awe. She had spent her life studying rules, tradition, and instinct. Humans had shown her a new path, that survival could also come from reason, choice, and intelligence. As they left the council chambers, escorted by guards who now regarded them with cautious respect, Evan spoke quietly. This is just the beginning. The galaxy watches now. We've survived the first challenge, but there will be more.
Every species that underestimates humans will learn the same lesson we just proved.
Valith glanced at him, a faint smile crossing her features. And yet, you do it without pride, without arrogance. That is what makes it so terrifying. Your species survives because it thinks, and it endures because it chooses.
Evan nodded. We survive because we refuse to give up.
We endure because we refuse to accept limits imposed by others, and when we act together, nothing can stop us. The human delegation returned to their ship, leaving the Kalari Council to absorb the implications of the new precedent. The galaxy had begun to take note. Humans were not to be underestimated, not because of their weapons, not because of their numbers, but because of their will, intelligence, and the choices they made. Valeth walked beside Evan as they entered the shuttle that would return them to the human flagship.
I do not yet understand your species fully, she said.
But I know this. Humans are not to be taken lightly. You survive where others fail, and you bend rules without breaking them.
That is extraordinary. Evan smiled faintly, watching the stars streak past the window.
We endure. That is what humans do, and sometimes endurance alone is enough to change the galaxy. Outside, the Kalari city spun beneath them, bright and alive. The stars stretched endlessly into the distance. Humanity had survived, but this was only the first demonstration of its potential. Challenges would come, yes, but the precedent had been set. The galaxy had learned that humans did not bow to fear or tradition. Humans survived, and they did so with intelligence, courage, and unbreakable will.
Valeth looked at Evan, patterns shimmering softly.
You are a human. And I am beginning to understand what makes your species unstoppable.
Evan nodded. We survive not because we are the strongest.
We survive because we refuse to give up. And when the galaxy challenges us, we show them exactly why they underestimated us. The shuttle moved into open space, leaving the Kellery capital behind. Humanity had proven itself not through force, not through intimidation, but through reason, courage, and ingenuity. And the galaxy had begun to take notice. The flagship glided silently through the black expanse of space, its hull reflecting distant starlight. Inside, Captain Evan Rourke reviewed the communications reports, while Vialith, the Kalari Council member, sat across from him. The events of the last few days had already shaken the Kalari Dominion to its core. The survival compact they had created was no longer just a loophole, it was a precedent that could change the galaxy. Bailiff leaned forward, her alien patterns flickering with thought. Your species, you have survived what none of mine would have even dared to challenge. Not by instinct, not by weapons, but by thinking, by reasoning. The Council has no choice but to accept it.
Evan nodded.
That is what humans do. We survive because we refuse to give up, because we adapt, and because we are willing to see possibilities where others see only rules. The shuttle docked with the Kalari capital's main council chamber, this time under calm conditions. The emergency had passed, but the political tension remained. The council had convened an extraordinary session to discuss the implications of the survival compact. It was clear that some members were uneasy with the precedent it set. Others were openly curious. Humans had entered their traditions and laws in a way no one had ever done before. Thalrex, the senior council elder, addressed them first. His voice, though calm, carried the weight of centuries.
Captain Rourke, Valeth, the Survival Compact has been reviewed. It satisfies the law, yes, but it also challenges the foundation of our customs.
How do you justify not only surviving but reshaping the law in the process? Evan stood tall, his gaze steady. The law exists to preserve life.
That was the purpose when it was written centuries ago. Tradition can be important, yes, but law without reason is a trap. Humans survive by understanding rules, not by blindly following them. We honored the law's spirit, ensured both lives were saved, and preserved the intent of the Council.
That is why our compact is valid, the chamber murmured.
Even among the Kalari, there was recognition of the precision in his argument. Bailiff added her voice, calm and authoritative.
Captain Rourke has interpreted the law with care and respect. The compact preserves life and honor. If the council ignores it, the law itself loses meaning. One of the younger council members, clearly uncomfortable, challenged them. But if humans can bend the law like this, what prevents them from abusing it in the future? Can we trust them? Evan's eyes were sharp.
Trust is earned through actions.
We have acted to save lives, to respect the law, and to uphold honor. That is proof enough. Humans are not predictable in the way other species might expect, but we are consistent in our commitment to what we declare. That is our strength. A long silence followed. Then Dalrex spoke again, slower this time. You have proven that survival can be achieved through reasoning, not instinct alone. That is dangerous, yet undeniable. Perhaps our traditions must evolve to recognize that. Valeth exhaled softly, relief and awe in her expression. It is rare for the council to admit such a thing. But you have forced them to see reality. You have changed history. Evan smiled faintly.
We did not seek to change history.
We sought only to survive. But sometimes, survival requires showing others a new path. Outside the chambers, the galaxy was beginning to take notice. The survival compact had been transmitted to other species, showing the world how humans had faced the Kalari laws and emerged not only alive, but victorious. Diplomats from nearby systems requested meetings, scientists analyzed human logic, and military strategists noted the unique approach to crisis management. Humanity's reputation as clever, adaptable, and dangerous in subtle ways was growing. In the following days, Valeth and Evan worked closely with the Council to formalize the Survival Compact as a recognized legal framework. This was not just about their own bond. It was about creating a system where reasoning could replace blind ritual, where choice could be recognized as valid, and where survival did not have to mean death for one party or dishonor for another. The process was tense. Some council members resisted, fearing loss of tradition. Others embraced the new framework, fascinated by the clarity and logic that humans brought. Each meeting was a negotiation, each statement a careful argument. But Evan remained patient, calm, and precise. Humans had learned to survive by thinking first, and that skill was proving unstoppable. Valeth observed him with quiet admiration. Your species, you are relentless. Even when others resist, you do not tire. You do not panic. You reason, you wait, and you act at the right moment. That is how you win without war.
Evan nodded. That is what survival requires.
Not strength alone, not fear, choice, strategy, and persistence. That is why humans endure. The Council finally voted to adopt the Survival Compact as a formal legal precedent. The decision marked a turning point in Kalari history. Laws that had stood for centuries were now interpreted to recognize choice and reasoning as valid paths to survival. The ripple effect was immediate. Kalari diplomats spoke cautiously but respectfully with humans. Other species took notice. The galaxy began to understand that humans did not simply act, they adapted, interpreted, and survived in ways no one could anticipate.
Evan and Valeth stood together in the council chambers after the vote, looking out at the city below.
The towers gleamed in the red light of the star, calm after days of chaos. Valeth's voice was soft, almost reverent. You have changed everything. Not through force, not through intimidation, but by thought, by choice.
Evan smiled. Sometimes the hardest battles are not fought with weapons, but with reasoning.
That is how humans survive. That is why we endure. For the first time since their ordeal began, both allowed themselves to relax. They had faced the council, the law, and the chaos of the station, and they had emerged victorious. But more than victory,
They had established a precedent that would resonate across the galaxy. Humans could survive where others failed, not because of strength or instinct, but because of intelligence, courage, and choice. News of the compact spread quickly. Messages reached distant systems, showing a human captain who had survived an alien law through reason. Across the galaxy, other species began to reconsider their assumptions about humanity. Humans were clever, adaptable, and unpredictable. They could be trusted, but they could not be controlled. Valeth watched as Evan reviewed reports from other systems. Your species, you survive in ways we cannot fully comprehend. We feared humans were weak, emotional, reckless, but now we see differently. Evan's gaze remained steady. We survive because we refuse to accept limits others impose. We endure because we act when others hesitate. That is what makes humans dangerous in ways no weapon can match. Valeth's patterns shimmered softly, a sign of deep respect. You do not rely on fear, nor on tradition, nor on instinct alone. You rely on thought, courage, and loyalty. That is unstoppable.
The flagship moved through space, leaving the Kalari capital behind.
Humanity had not only survived a deadly law, it had reshaped it. The galaxy would remember this day, and it would remember humanity. Not for violence, not for numbers, not for technology, but for the relentless will, intelligence, and courage that allowed them to face impossible odds and emerge victorious. Evan looked at Valeth, her alien features calm but still full of wonder.
We have proven something important, he said quietly. Humans are not to be underestimated.
Not because of our weapons or strength, but because we think, we adapt, we endure. And in doing so, you inspire even those of us who thought we understood life and law. You show that survival is not about fear. It is about choice. It is about reason. And that is a lesson the galaxy cannot ignore. Evan's eyes drifted toward the stars. There will be more challenges.
Other species will test us. Other laws will try to trap us.
But humans, we survive. And when we act together, nothing can stop us. Outside, the stars stretched endlessly. Humanity had left its mark not through violence, not through intimidation, but through courage, intelligence, and an unbreakable will. The galaxy was watching. And now, everyone would know that when humans are cornered, when survival is at stake, they do not merely survive, they rewrite the rules. Valeth's voice was almost a whisper. I did not know survival could be like this. Not through instinct, not through law, but through choice, through decision, through reasoning. Evan smiled.
That is humanity.
And that is why we endure. The flagship moved forward, carrying both human and Kellery, bound not by fear or obligation, but by reason, trust, and the unyielding determination to survive.
A new chapter had begun, not just for them, but for the galaxy. And humanity, once underestimated, had shown the universe exactly what it meant to endure.